Welcome, everyone. Good morning. I'm Noriko Nakada. Welcome. Before we begin, please know that live transcript can be opened in a new tab by clicking in the transcript button in the top left corner. That's an Otter AI transcript. So you can follow along there. It's also a wonderful resource to be able to kind of go back in the conversation and take a look. So take a look at that link. It's a wonderful resource for you. Let us begin by acknowledging the traditional stewards of the ground we're all collectively standing on. We show gratitude to the Tongva, Gabrielino, Quiche people past and present for caring for this ground that was stolen for them that we now know as Los Angeles. I invite you to acknowledge the ancestral people of the ground you are currently on by sharing their names in the chat and to consider what actions you can take to help Indigenous people gain autonomy today. Women Who Submit believes acknowledgement is most powerful when paired with direct action. Indigenous Women Rising is works for Indigenous access to reproductive healthcare, and Missing Murdered Indigenous Women USA brings the missing home to their families. These are two organizations that Sochi is putting in the chat this morning, and any support that you can point in that direction is highly appreciated. All right, so welcome to the Women Who Submit Literary Workshop and Orientation. We begin today with the panel, Agents and Clients, Keys to a Partnership. I am your moderator, Noriko Nakada, or Noriko Nakada. If you are having any technical issues or need clarification, you can message the Women Who Submit official account directly in the chat, and hopefully y'all can see that account. Sochi's behind that one. All right, so just a few reminders before we begin. This event is being recorded and can be later found on YouTube. Please check that you're muted and keep yourself muted throughout the program. There will be time in the last 10 minutes for questions from the audience. To ask a question, raise your hand or use the raised hand emoji and wait to be called upon. Remember that live transcript can be opened in a new tab by clicking the transcript button in the top left corner. This Zoom will close at the end of this panel at about 11, and following the panel, there will be breakout sessions in person at Avenue 50 Studio. A new member orientation with Tisha Marie Reichley Aguilera and submission party with Lauren Eggert Crow will begin at 11:30. All right, so now let me introduce our fantastic panelists. Let me just make sure I'm on all the right screens. All right. So first we're going to start with Natashia Deón, who is a two-time NAACP Image Award nominee for Outstanding Literature, Hurston Wright Foundation Legacy Award nominee in fiction, a practicing criminal attorney and author of the critically acclaimed and widely reviewed novels, The Perishing and Grace. She is a professor in creative writing at Yale, UCLA, and Antioch University. Deón's personal essays have been featured in the New York Times, Harper's, the Los Angeles Times, Harper's Bazaar, American Short Fiction, BuzzFeed, and other places. She is represented by Dara Hyde. Let's give it up. That's my transition. It's quick. We're going to go from Natashia to Dara, just like that. All right, Dara Hyde is a senior agent at the Hill Nadell Literary Agency in Los Angeles and represents a wide range of fiction and nonfiction, including literary and genre fiction, graphic novels, narrative nonfiction, memoir, young adult, and children's literature. Her clients have been winners or finalists for the Women's Prize, NAACP Image Award, Carnegie Medal, Eisner Award, Anthony Award, YALSA Award, Harvey Award, International Latino Book Award, and the Reading the West Award, among others. Whew, it's like reading a best of list. Amazing. Welcome, Natashia and Dara. All right, and then our other two panelists are, I'm going to start with Amanda Orozco. Amanda is a literary agent at Transatlantic. She graduated from NYU with her Master's of Science in Publishing, Digital and Print Media. Before joining Transatlantic, she worked in the subsidiary rights at Little Brown and at Park and Fine Literary and Media. While at NYU, she interned at the National Book Foundation, Shreve Williams Public Relations, and the Gurnett Company. She currently lives and works in Los Angeles. And Amanda represents Eva Recinos. Eva is an arts and culture journalist, creative nonfiction writer, and editor based in Los Angeles. Her reviews, features, and profiles have been featured in the Los Angeles Times, The Guardian, Art 21, Poets and Writers Magazine, Hyperallergic, and more. Her essays have appeared in Refinery 29, Pank, Blood Orange Review, Airlight, Electric Literature, and more. She is the creator of Notes from Eva, a monthly newsletter for creatives. Please welcome all of our panelists today, everybody. Woo woo. I forget how quiet it is in a Zoom. I've been in person for, over a year now, and so I'm remembering. All right, lots of love coming in the chat from folks, and a lot of acknowledgement of our Indigenous land acknowledgements. Appreciate that, everybody. All right, so I'm going to start by just posing a couple of questions to our agents. So agents, I'd love to know when you started representing writers, kind of your history as an agent and your philosophy, like how do you approach your representation of your clients? Dara, do you want to start?
Sure, I will start. So I started my publishing career. I had actually been in film editing before, but I started my publishing career working in-house at a publishing company in New York City, Grove Atlantic. And it was a small enough company that I did both editorial and subsidiary rights for them. And when my family moved out to Los Angeles is when I changed over to becoming an agent and realized that my film background, plus being both rights and editorial in-house, you put a lot of that all together and it becomes an agent. And I feel like there are a lot of agents that come to agenting from other aspects of publishing, because agenting does encompass so much of the work of being a writer, from the beginning of an idea all the way through selling it and after that. And so it's really helpful, I think, at least for me, to really have that wide range of knowledge about the entire publishing process. So I think my philosophy as an agent is I'm a developmental agent. I work really closely with my writers. Sometimes they're coming to me after they've already finished something, especially if we've been working together for a while. We are developing ideas and working at things from the ground up. And so I really relish that. And I like working with my clients for the breadth of their careers. I don't take on usually someone, just feel like, oh, maybe this one book will work. I want to try to develop them as writers for a long-term career. And my list has changed over time, in part because what my clients want to do has also changed. So I represent, I have adult writers who then said, well, I also want to do a picture book. Or I have an adult writer who then was like, well, I'm also going to do graphic novels. And so my list has evolved in that way, which to me is really exciting, because what I love is being in the mind of my clients and with them on this journey to find the best place for them to be published and how to be published. And so I see my job as creative. I see my job as definitely financial, negotiation, contracts, professional nudger to get things across. But I sort of do all of it at once, and want to be there for my clients from the beginning all the way through.
Great. That's wonderful. Amanda, do you want to?
Yeah, that was great. I totally agree with much of what Dara said. I also have a background in subsidiary rights and got the opportunity to work at 2 different agencies before going over to the publishing side. So that might have biased me a bit towards the agenting side. I think after working at Little Brown, getting to see the inner workings of a major publisher was really enlightening, and I think showed me, how much work and how many hands touch a book on the publishing house side. But while I was there, really missed the aspect of getting to work one-on-one with an author and have more of that collaborative, creative input in putting a project together and getting my hands dirty in a manuscript and really doing that editorial work. And just kind of thinking more long term too for an author's career. So yeah, I joined the Transatlantic Agency in the fall of 2020, which is about when I started building my list and taking on writers. And it's been a steady almost 3 years now of getting to work with some really incredible writers. And my philosophy is really just, as an agent, I am an advocate and a champion for not just a writer's singular work, but the writer themselves and the work that they do across their career. And so I think it's really important to me to be mindful too of a writer's background and what they've worked towards. And my eye is always towards the writing itself, but I also have a heart for stories from perspective we don't get to hear from a whole lot. And I think being on the West Coast and being in LA, there is some of that. I think New York publishing can be a little self-focused sometimes. So yeah, I just really, really appreciate getting to be in LA and represent writers from this side of the country but all throughout the country as well and outside of the country internationally. And just thinking about how we can broaden publishing and really truly diversify it. And but like Dara, I also really just enjoy the editorial process and love finding a diamond in the rough and working with the writer to polish and refine their projects until it's ready to go out to publishers.
Love that. It's so inspiring to hear agents talk about bringing work forward that is, not what we all see, and to hear from women in this industry who are working so hard for all of us. So good to hear. So I'm curious, what was it about this particular client's query that let you know that this was a match?
I can go first, unless you want to go, Dara.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's funny because Eva actually didn't query me. I sought her out. So she had written this beautiful essay for the literary journal that I work with out here in LA, formerly called Dryland, now named Sinsisar. And it was The Streets Are Made of Anchor, right, Eva? I think that was the one that was in issue 10. And so that just piqued my interest, and right away I just reached out to her and I wanted to hear more about what else she was working on. And her website showed that she has done a lot of work and has gotten so many publication bylines and was writing on a lot of topics I was interested in personally, with the intersection of art and race and class. And so we had a conversation and I just was really inspired by the project that she had told me about and was working on. So we decided to work together on the proposal for her work. And and it's been a really, really fun ride to go on.
I also was not officially queried in a traditional sense by Natasha. We knew each other socially in Los Angeles. Again, it's a beautiful literary town where you can meet a lot of people in publishing in person. And I think it's only growing. It's been really fantastic, again, like Amanda, to be outside of New York and be in publishing and be able to sort of champion voices that sometimes New York may not understand or see in the same way. But Natasha and I knew each other socially from book events, and she called me and she actually said, I want to talk to you about a manuscript. And I thought it was going to be maybe a student or someone she had met. And she said, no, about mine. And I said, what? Like I knew she had an agent. She said, no, I left my agent. And, I know you, I know your work. I would really be, interested if you are interested. So I read the partial she had for her next novel, and it was amazing. And we decided to work together. And the book that we did together is The Perishing. She had done Grace, her first novel, with her previous agent. And we're working on projects right now. And it's been really interesting to sort of be, when you're with a client who's already had an experience with a previous agent, you oftentimes can talk about maybe what didn't work or what you're looking for that you didn't get before, or even just a different point in your career and why you needed to change. So that was a lot of what we talked about, was what do you want? What do you need? What are you looking for? I really respond to Natasha's writing and her worldview and her activism, and everything that she brings to her work as a person is incredibly exciting. But then also her work is just astounding. So it was a wonderful thing to be able to work with her.
That's great. And now we're gonna like flip it and hear the meet cute from our from our writers. Or I'm curious about, for both Natasha and Eva, like did you query agents before? Had you been represented before? Like what how did you know that this was the one when you were approached? Natasha, do you want to go first, or Eva?
You want me to go first? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I am definitely a person who didn't know a lot about querying, and someone who had to get used to kind of coming from a more arts and culture background, had to get used to the patience that it requires in terms of querying and just all of the things publishing. That was very, very different for me. I'm used to pitching stories, not pitching myself. And so that was another big shift. I think I'm trying to think of a concrete number of queries, but I honestly kind of can't. I think I started querying for the first time seriously in 2019. And at that point, I had not even a full manuscript just yet, but I had been working on this proposal for a while and putting it out there. And some of them were form submissions through websites. Some of them were cold emails. And so it was quite an experience. There was one agent that I was talking to for almost an entire calendar year, because as a lot of us know, the publishing world has a lot of turnover and changes, and she was moving from one agency to another. She had a lot of projects going on, and that first time around was very intense. And it was so funny because she was representing an author that I really love, who was having an event at Skylight, and this agent didn't live in LA. And I was at the event, and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, can I sit next to you?" And it's her. It's like, "Oh my God, good to see you." And so she was very sweet and basically turned me down in person, like told me at the event, "I don't have the bandwidth. I think it's a good project. Like, oh, look at this author. Actually, this could be a good comm title, et cetera, et cetera." And I was like, okay, that's fine. I got in my partner's car and just immediately started crying. Because I feel like I had pent up so much of that energy just from sending out all the emails, from speaking with her, from really like getting my hopes up. And it just, I don't know, it was my first go around. So I think I had to give myself a little grace with that. And yeah, I had an agent who said, "Oh, I actually know of your work, but I don't think you have a big enough platform. So come back to me if your platform is bigger sometime in the near future." And just a variety of experiences. I had another agency say, oh, we want rights of first refusal, where we're going to help you edit the proposal and we'll be the ones to say yes or no. If we say no, you can go out with it. You know, I'm going to send you the info in the mail in the next week, only for her to say, oh, actually, I'm leaving. So I had a lot of twists and turns on my way over. So I guess it makes sense that once I heard, when I had the essay come out in Dryland, first of all, that was an essay where I felt like it was very different from a lot of my other writing and very vulnerable, and it wouldn't have been something that I in a way would have imagined someone reaching out about. But Viva, who's the editor-in-chief of Synthesar, called me and she said, do you have an agent? Amanda and I were talking, we figured you did. And I was like, no, I don't. What, what's up? Do you want to talk? So, and Amanda and I talked, and it was just so validating to hear her say, you know, I really love this essay because it did feel so vulnerable to me. And then we just started talking about projects and kind of getting a feel for each other, and the rest is history.
Love it. Natasha, how about you?
Hey, oh my gosh. So like Dara said, I knew her socially. Um, and I've said this before, I like the way she drinks. No, it was I had been with one agent who sold my first novel, Grace, who I was so grateful. Actually, I'll go back to the beginning. So when I was a Penn Emerging Voices Fellow, and then I went and got an MFA. And when I was getting my MFA, I was like, oh my God, you know, everybody's like, you have to have an agent. Everybody has to have an agent. And I was like, I need an agent too, like right now. I'm not even finished with it, but it was so scary. Uh, so I wanted to get an agent my last year, right after I finished, you know, my thesis. Um, and then I sent out queries and I just said, Penn Emerging Voices Fellow. So I knew that I needed to use my background or the best piece of my background in the subject line, submission. And also I was a Breadlow Fellow, so I could put these things in there so they could open the email. And I got great responses. One I was gonna go with because he was in New York, represented my favorite writer at the time. And he said, yeah, let's keep talking. It was one of these big agents. And then I had sent out the opening of my novel, and it was published in, where was that? Prague. And she read that opening and she reached out to me. And I love that she was so into the essay, like she got what I was saying, that I didn't wait for him and I went with her. And it was great at first. It was great until Grace started doing really well, and it was in the New York Times, this Time magazine, People, like all this stuff. And I would call and I couldn't reach her, you know, the time difference. And then it was like the summer, it was travel, and it was just, and so I felt very um, alone when everything was happening. And it had never happened. I didn't have any friends to really talk to who experienced that. Like friends who had published, yes, but been in that sort of tornado where everybody's pulling on you. I didn't know that I needed a booking agent, which I have now. Dara was able to get me a book to film agent. So there's like 3 agents. And now I'm like, okay. And then I have to have my regular life, teaching and court. But it was a real mind fudge. And I felt like my first agent was competent and I wanted her. I chose her. But for this next step, I wanted to feel like I needed somebody who was there with me if it happened again. And it did happen again with the perishing. And Dara is there. Every freak out that I had, like, oh my God, you know, even if it was like everybody hates me, Dara, you don't understand. Everyone hates me. They want, you know, because it just gets pretty wild. And she was there. She's like, let's talk you off the cliff, Natasha. Let's work through this. And even when I wanted to sell my manuscript, the one that I called her about, and I was like, Dara, I left my agent, which everybody says is the wrong thing to do. Never fire your agent, but I did because it was a leap of faith for me. I said, if I have to make a difficult decision, it's probably the right decision, but I needed to feel comfortable. Whatever happens, I wanted to be comfortable. And I knew I could be comfortable with Dara, because for all of us as writers, your agent is your first business partner. Like you're both making money, right? If you do well, they have an interest in you doing well, and then that makes them money and vice versa. So even if you come out with little action figures from your book because it becomes a movie, your agent still gets paid from that, right? So I wanted to be with somebody that I wasn't afraid to call. Like, why should I be afraid to call somebody that's working with me and for me? And all those things. And she was somebody and I say because she could drink well, is somebody that I didn't fear. So that's what I mean. I could sit with her and say, Dara, you know what, this isn't working out. Dara, I need money on this one. Or Dara, I don't want to shop like the Perishing anywhere. I just wanted to go to Counterpoint and I want to get the most money because I want to have a living room that I like to sit in. And she was like, we got that. And she did it. It's like, she's like, what do you want? What are you thinking about? And then it's different as your career goes on because some people want that instant fame. I want to be a famous actor. I want my books everywhere. And I was like, I need it to be like a slow burn. I want to get better. I don't need it to be like, crazy. And I believe that she could do that. And she has been doing that. And so we've just been working at a pace that's manageable because when I die, I just want it to be like, that's the best book I could have written at that time. And I know it's true because I also have Dara.
That's so great. And Natasha, like learning to have that partner, several people have written it down and I did too, that like your agent is your first business partner and like the relationship, like if they're your biggest fan because y'all make money, the writer makes money. And so that you like working together helps everyone. So you kind of touched on a couple of the other questions that I had about, the breakup. How do you, I mean, there's so much movement within the publishing industry. How do you know when an agent partnership has kind of run its course? This could, agents and clients, you can both all answer this. How do you know when it's time to move on? How do you do so gracefully? If they say never break up with your agent, but that the relationship isn't providing what you need, how do you do that and how do you not burn bridges? Maybe I'll get our agent.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Go ahead, Natasha.
Okay. So for me, I can't say that I did it gracefully. I want to be like, yeah, I did it. I was perfect. It was sweet. No, I didn't know who has that experience. I went to my mentor. He's like, don't do it, Natasha. Don't do it. I'm like, but I said, my writing is the most important thing to me besides my family. And there's something that's just not right. I can't put my finger on it because I don't know everything, but there's something that's just not right. And how can I give my baby to somebody? And I've given this example too. It was like going into battle, because that's what it feels like. You're going into battle hoping that the world will love your baby, right? You're going into battle. And I felt like I had to look. We're standing on this battle line. I had to look to see if her shoes were on, or if they were tied. Like, you shouldn't have to do that with your agent. I don't have to look over my shoulder and be like, Dara, are you on it? I can't do that job too. I could do my job as a writer. I can come out and talk. So it was just a feeling and I had to trust it. I had to walk on faith like all of us are doing. Like, for most of us, nobody's waiting for your book. You've written it and you're hoping that people will receive it. Nobody's waiting for your shit, right? So you need somebody to be a cheerleader with you. So I called my agent, my last agent, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't, I have to let you go. I said, and it really hurts me that I have to. I said, it's not. And she was like, well, why? And I said, I'm sorry, and it was just like that. And then it was like paperwork, because she still gets paid from Grace, but she doesn't like send me a check. Dara, like, make sure that my royalties are paid, because I paid off my royalties. So there's stuff that happens that you don't think about. Like, I didn't know Counterpoint, my first publisher, wasn't going to just send me the money. they have to send it to her, and she's like, I'm not sending it to you. Yeah, I'm not your agent. So it was like, stuff like that. So now they have to send me my portion, send her percentage. So things like that you don't think about. But you just do the best you can. That's what it is. You just do the best you can with the little bit of information that you have. And that's what I tried to do.
Yeah, I
Eva,
think
you
that's.
talked about, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to speak to that. I mean, I think everything Natasha said is, I think a lot of, a writer's career is trial and error, but I think panels like these always help to learn from other writers' experiences. I don't know if there is necessarily one right way to break up with an agent or, vice versa. Like, I think it's always going to be difficult. Like, I think there's always going to be an emotional investment on both sides, because this work is so personal, to you as a writer, but also to us. We have like invested our time, and we have invested our emotional energy into a project. And so, I think when a partnership has run its course, when that energy is no longer there, from one side or the other. I think you can tell when, like Natasha was saying, an agent doesn't have your back and it doesn't have the energy to take care of you and your work in the way that you think it needs. And like, that's fair to recognize. And I think part of doing that gracefully is having that first conversation, and having it be an honest conversation of, as the writer, this is what I need, and like, I haven't felt like you have been doing this for me. Can you address that? Can we change it? Can we switch up how we're working? And maybe it's giving them another chance to kind of adjust, how they're working with you, because maybe they also just aren't aware, like, that's something you need, and it's something that is so obvious to you. But as agents, we also work with so many different writers that have different styles and like preferences in terms of communication, that it can be hard for us to know, like, can I text this person, can like, or should I just email? So I think that's a conversation to have before really making the decision. It's just not working out, let's terminate this relationship. And at the end of the day, it is business, so you want to keep it professional. That's kind of just not letting the emotion overtake it, I think is a really important factor, not burning those bridges, as hard as it might be. So yeah, I don't think that's like the best answer, and I can't speak to the writing side of it, because I'm sure it's hard to take that leap of faith and fire your agent, and have to face the querying trenches again. But I think as a writer, you have that intuitive sense of like, I'm not getting what I need, and in order to grow in my career, I need something else.
And I would just add to that we know that people need to move agents for different reasons. So it's not necessarily a huge red flag if somebody comes to us and says, I've already been represented. Oftentimes you do want to have a frank conversation about what didn't work in the previous relationship. And there are lots of different reasons for why it may not work. One of the things that does happen quite a bit, and we spoke on it before, is people leave the industry, they leave agenting for another part of publishing, people retire. And so being just really honest about, oh, I was represented before, here's who I was represented by, here's why, we're no longer working together. Because if you're not starting off that conversation in a really honest way, it's much harder for that new agent to also approach things, on the same level. The one thing that does become a red flag is if somebody has jumped a lot. Like if I see someone who's had 5 or 6 agents in 4 books or something, that becomes a little bit like, oh, that may be a little bit more of a red flag, and that relationship seems to be difficult for them to keep long term. But it's not it's not a huge, I think it used to be seen as more like, oh, you can't leave your agent, but you can. Like, there are times when it doesn't work. And there are times when agents also have to let clients know that they also feel that it's not working out anymore. So it is something to just know it happens. And that if you work through it in like the most honest and straightforward way, it usually is a fine thing to happen. And that, yes, your new agent has to know how to handle your previous royalties. And one of the things with Natashia that was interesting was that we got her foreign rights and her film rights from her previous agent. And I was able to then sell Grace for translation, which had not happened with her previous agent. And so that felt like, oh, okay, here I'm able to sort of help you, get more from even a book I didn't represent, even though we now have some of those sub rights. So it's just a way to sort of think about, there is a progression, even if you have multiple books with different agents.
Can I just add one thing? Thank you so much for reminding me of that, Dara. Just before you speak it, I mean, because the same book, so it wasn't, I know I said that it was a feeling, but it was like little signs too, like red flags, like being in a bad relationship. So right after my first book became, it was named, it was two of us, one of my good friends, we were one of the New York Times, best books of the year. So, and I thought, oh, this is a good time to sell foreign rights because that was important to me. And plus, I need the money, so let's real talk. I need the money, right? So, like, let's sell it. And my friend and I were both with her agency. And the email of celebration was, if anybody wants to buy foreign rights, this was on Facebook, I represent both of these books. So if anybody wants to buy it, it was like, no, I don't think that's how foreign rights works. I think you have to like have a co-agent, you have to like sell it around. So that was like one of the red flags. And I knew it was not going to sell foreign rights. Grace wasn't. So the first thing Dara did within the first month of her representing me was to sell foreign rights to Grace, and through co-agents and the proper way. The first time I sat down and spoke with, my book to film agent, it was like a real conversation. With my last agent, I literally walked to CAA. I had a big poster of my book, and I sat there for 45 minutes waiting for her to call me in. And then it was like, I felt like I was being made fun of by even being there. That's what it was like before. And when I was telling Dara was like, well, tell me what happened. And I told her it was my feeling. And then I was able to articulate those two things. So sitting down with two of the best agents at ICM, now CAA. So I'm at the same place I was with the best agent, was a whole different experience. And I didn't know it wasn't what I deserved before, because I didn't know. Nobody had been there that I could talk to, so, and Dara was there as a professional to walk me through that, and also to make me money so that I could eat. Yeah.
Yeah, you wanna be able to eat, leave no crumbs with those words. So we've talked a little bit about the publishing landscape right now, and I'm curious to hear, especially as West Coast agents, and two women who do represent, some of the voices that are often left out of the literary landscape. How is the publishing landscape looking right now for women, for underrepresented folks, and how does your approach as a West Coast agent kind of almost give you the leg up on being able to come from outside the industry a little bit into those rooms?
I'll go first if you want, Amanda. Okay. So I think it's, I'm not sure what it would have been like if I'd started agenting without having spent over a decade in publishing in New York, because I do know what that's like. I know it sometimes is a bit of a fishbowl. It can be a little gossipy. It can be very insular. It can also be amazing. There's amazing people there. I sell to New York editors all the time. What for me being out here does, besides my quality of life and weather and all those things, is that, one, I love the Los Angeles literary community. I think it's very rich. I think it's underestimated by New York. I think it is full of amazing, talented people, and I do represent a lot of writers who are based in Los Angeles or in the sort of West Coast area. And I think there is, I will give you an anecdote. This is from years ago. I don't think it would be the same now, but Bonnie Nadell, who owns the agency that I work for, she had, one of the best books on sort of crossing the border that Sonia Nazario had done. When she was trying to sell it, she said, "Oh, I have this book about children trying to get on the trains to cross the border." And a bunch of New York agents said, "What border?" Editors, they didn't. And she was like, the border in the South, and if they're going to cross a dangerous border, sometimes New York is just not aware of a lot of the issues that face us in the West. Again, this was years ago, but it was a fascinating sort of moment for her to say, oh, right, the perspective here is different. And I do represent a lot of writers who are sort of west of the Mississippi. And I think, as far as representing voices that you don't hear from as often, for me, that means it's a wide range. I have writers I have a writer who's 82. So for me, sometimes that means writers who are not 20 somethings who just came out of school and who know the writing scene. It is writers who are not represented normally, whether that is because of their race or their gender or their sexuality or their experience or their geography. And because I am not chasing something that is a trend or is specific to what maybe people in New York are saying they want at that moment, even though I'm aware of it, I am looking for something that's really authentic and that I haven't seen before, something I haven't heard before that I think can further the conversation that we all have when we publish a book. There's something that you're adding to a conversation with a book in the world. And I think being out here, I sometimes just have less noise that I can just really focus on trying to find the best writers that I also connect with and that will bring something new to the conversation of the world. So that would be my short answer. It's a long answer, but I think right now with publishing in New York, I'll just say, I think that there is an openness. I think that they have tried to do a lot of reckoning with publishing. I will say publishing is still predominantly something that the people who work there come from wealthy backgrounds, and I don't. And that was something that I felt very distinctly when I was in New York. The other people that I was working with were working, not all of them, but a lot of them were working. They didn't really need their salary in the same way that I needed it. And as well-meaning as many of those people are, that is a level of privilege that changes the way they view what they read. And that is something that I really value in being able to talk to my clients honestly about money, about the people who have money or don't have money, and publishing. The people behind the scenes need to be as diverse as the people they're trying to publish, because I don't think you're going to have readers, agents, editors, publishers, marketing people, publicity people who can understand a book if you don't have more diversity behind the scenes. So I think that by being out here, having a different perspective, also not coming from, a privileged background, that gives me a perspective that hopefully helps my clients and then helps those voices get out into the world.
Yeah, I think, change in the publishing industry happens in inches. And I, haven't been in the industry quite as long as Dara. And so I think Dara could speak more to, the New York publishing scene and how she's seen it evolve. But yeah, I think it's the business side of writing, I'm hoping, is shifting so that writers are more empowered to, for instance, discuss money. I think about the publishing paid me discourse that was happening on Twitter a few years ago, and in terms of really just being honest about, that behind the scenes stuff that we used to be so shy about talking about advances, and we shouldn't, because I think that's the only way we can really achieve equity is if we are at the same understanding of which writers are getting paid how much, and really thinking about why. or just thinking about like how books are positioned, as Dara said, and even things like the cover, can be such a contentious thing, because if you have your cover designer coming from a completely different perspective than the writer, they might not understand the implications of some of the imagery that they're using, and how it can be harmful or detrimental or offensive. And so yeah, I think being here on the West Coast, as Dara said, like does give us this kind of outsider perspective of not being so sucked into the New York stream of, I remember, being at the Granite Company, the preoccupation with MFAs is still very much a thing, especially in New York. I think there's something about Ivy Leagues and like just the East Coast, New England prep atmosphere of like, it's really about who your family is and what schools you went to. And so I think just kind of being from here, being from SoCal, like I think kind of gives me a groundedness. And for me, the MFA programs, like while they can be very helpful for writers in developing their craft, like it's not as much of a priority to me as, does your work emotionally resonate with me? And my whole ethos as an agent is really finding the works that I just fall in love with, and it's the same feeling as when you read any book off of a shelf and you immediately have to tell 5 people about it. And that's basically our job as agents, in addition to a lot of other like business side things. But I think, at the core of the selling books part is very much like finding the works that we are really, really passionate about, and, connecting them with the right readers. And I think being out here on the West Coast makes it easier for us to find those writers that we're passionate about, maybe because we're not in the New York bubble. But yeah, I find that it's writers on the West Coast tend to write about the things that I care about too, versus East Coast writers, can just have different preoccupations. So yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, like from the writer perspective, in terms of everything that Amanda's saying, and West Coast and Los Angeles, is that the essay that Amanda really responded to was about growing up in South Central, and it was about sort of girlhood and youth, and sort of the city, and how the city changes people and influences people. And I think I got really lucky because Amanda responded to that in a way that wasn't exoticizing it, because I think there were some points when I was doing edits and even from my own sort of like what I internalized about essay collections or books, or how I was going to get agents' attention. I think there was a little bit of a risk of upping certain factors, or like wanting to mine certain traumas that now I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have been comfortable with that in the end, And I think Amanda never, asked me, really like didn't ask me to explain a lot of things. Like things just made sense to her, and didn't ask me to sort of, like I said, amp up the parts of it that are hard, because I think that helped me get into a more complex sort of editing thinking process about the manuscript. I think with one of the agents that I was talking to, there was kind of some editorial feedback that, looking back, I'm like, no, that would have been a weird essay to add. But I will say though, in terms of giving yourself grace, it's hard because I was excited, I was like, I'll change it, I'll add something, I'll see. And I think even from 2019 to now, it's like, oh yeah, no, I don't think that would have made sense actually. So I think that's huge, is just being able to be like, I don't have to explain certain things. I don't have to feel like I need to sort of mine certain things. This is just the way that I want to tell the story. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, so important. Thank you for that. So before we open it up for questions, I just wanted to get one last little 30-second pitch from y'all. What are we working on? Where are we in the submission publishing process for our clients, and then from our agents? Like, are you open to queries, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, so I can go first. Amanda and I have been shopping my memoir and essays for a minute now. I will say that one of the things that I also had to learn about publishing is just, I was so scared of editors' feedback. I was so afraid that they were going to be like, this is trash and I hate it, and Eva doesn't know how to write. And Amanda was very kind about sharing some of the feedback. And she said, just go easy on yourself. Like, don't take it too hard. And then I realized, like, everyone had such nice feedback, even when they were rejecting the manuscript. So we're kind of in the weeds of that right now. And I've started kind of playing around with another project. But yeah, Amanda has just been really supportive this whole time. So that's where I'm at.
For me, so I have a memoir proposal, and also I'm working on a World War II novel that I've already sent Dara probably the first quarter of it, just to sort of see how she's feeling. Am I in the right direction? My memoir proposal, we abandoned. Let me just say, I'm just gonna say something super honest. I know this is being recorded and transcript and everything, but rejections hurt. They really hurt, and they can be traumatizing. So your agent is going to be that person who is able to tell you the reasons why in a way that's helpful. They'll also edit themselves as shit that's not helpful. So also, when I'm saying fuck them, fuck them, they can't, when I'm having that feeling, Dara's like, well, let's rephrase that. Let's make that a cloud. It's like that painter guy, right? But you need that. You need somebody who can, you can tell how you feel, and it comes out in a way that New York can hear it, or that someone else, what do you mean you don't know what a fucking border is? Like, and she'll be like, oh, okay, well, it's not for them, So it's like that translation. So yeah, Bob Ross vibes. Like Dara has that both ways, both ways. No, but and that's part of, and I'm sure Amanda has to do that too with her clients. But I'm excited. She makes me excited about my work. She's reaching out to me saying, remember you were gonna send me these pages. I was like, oh, I was? Well, I better do that right now. So it's like, and I need that. I need that because I don't want to be angry and in my feelings from rejection when I'm talking to people. You don't want to be that person. This is our business. All of us, everybody in this room right now are our colleagues, right? Who do you want to be in your office in this world? So yeah.
Yeah, so I literally, I'm about halfway through the pages that Natasha sent me. That is the beginning of the next novel. They're amazing. Spoiler alert, which is exciting. And it's nice to be sort of let in early so that we can talk about where she is right now, where she wants to go with it, what the plan is for getting, we had already had an outline and sort of a one-page summary that we talked through, which we had worked on. Like I had asked you questions on that. I was like, I don't know, how is this going to work with this character if that's going to happen? So we had already sort of had a nice editorial conversation about what the novel roughly will be, so that we're on the same page, and that Natasha feels like she can just be like, yes, like, this is, I can go in head first. So I'm now getting to see that play out on the page, and it's amazing. And I will say, and I think we touched on it a little bit, how slow publishing can be. All of us love what we're doing. All of us are reading all the time, but unfortunately, like my day is actually not reading. My day is emails, looking at covers, looking at contracts, making sure royalties are coming in, having, conversations because someone isn't happy, having, what I mean? Like where I'm having to be like, oh, we got to have a conversation that I wasn't expecting. So just, I think, knowing that even in New York, they want great books. everybody wants to read amazing things, but everyone is slow. And I think the pandemic slowed down a lot of things. There's been talk about how slow contracts are and how slow editors are and how overworked everyone is. It's a really strangely slow process. And I know, Eva, you had mentioned, when you'd gone from being, working where you have deadlines and pitching stories, it can be a really slow process. But oftentimes that's not because people aren't interested or because they're not doing their work, unless they're not. But it is a slow moving machine, to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I just close to queries. I was open to queries in January, but moving forward, I'm open to queries the first month of every quarter. So I'll be next open in April, April 1st through the 30th.
Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, I'm closed right now. Only because I am completely overwhelmed with great stuff from clients and past queries, and I'm not caught up, and I thought I would be. And it's not fair, I think, for agents to take on new work that just comes through the transom if their backlog is too high. It's just not fair to either to the existing clients or to the new clients to take them on. So so I am also closed at the moment, but hopefully opening in the spring.
Great. A couple of questions that were in the chat. One was about right of first refusal. If someone wants to just say what that is and what might be some benefits or drawbacks of that.
I feel like the agents should answer this because I'd be curious too. It's been a while. It was presented to me as, we're going to give you feedback on your proposal, but once you incorporate that feedback, we want to have exclusive rights to say yes or no. If we say no, you can take it elsewhere, basically.
And so I think what basically you just want to make sure is that you would be okay with them, like after doing the feedback, make sure that that's a place where you would want your work to be if you agree to a right of first refusal. I don't know if someone wants to correct me on that.
I mean, I use that much less. For me, sometimes I might do a revise and resubmit, which people may have heard of, which is, your query is really strong. I think there's some really great things in here. Here's some of my feedback. You can take it or not. And if you want to revise based on some of this feedback and query me again, it's a revise and resubmit. So I will do that sometimes more than a right of first refusal, because I imagine with most writers, they may be getting feedback from lots of different places. And they have to decide what to take on and what not to take on, and then seeing from there. And there are times when I may not want it even after a revise and resubmit, which is, unfortunate, but it does happen. I'm like, it still just didn't quite work to what I wanted it to be. But, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to take it on.
Yeah, I also did a revise and resubmit where it wasn't so much rights of first refusal. And I think also it's a matter of, do you have the time to invest and do you want to revise based on their feedback, which I think is also just a good indicator of what your relationship might be like working together.
All right, so questions are coming in now, rapid fire. So let's try to get some just quick stuff. Does attending conferences like AWP help in finding an agent? It can be so challenging. I'll answer the next one, which is, I keep hearing it's hard to find an agent. Yes, it is hard to find the right match, So anyone want to answer the AWP question?
I personally have only done AWP once, and it was mostly to see publishing friends. But I know that any conferences that you can attend, even something like this, where you're getting more familiarity with other writers and with agents, and where you might get some FaceTime with an agent and you can do it, is helpful. AWP can be helpful. I think that there are some even local ones, like I sometimes would do like the Santa Barbara Writers Workshop, and I've got another writers workshop coming up later, like where I will review a few pages and have some FaceTime. So opportunities like that, if they're within your means or your time, they can be really helpful, partly just to demystify this process so that you have more exposure to different kinds of agents, to different kinds of writers, to understand the process better. Because I think if you come from a place of knowledge when you're querying, it can really help you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, it's 11:02, so I want to honor folks' time. I'm really, really grateful for the agents and for our client. I mean, thank you all for coming to this conversation. And folks, you know, especially if you're in the room in person or even here on the Zoom, like this is a great place to start the conversation, but you have a wealth of information in the writers that are sitting all around you. You know, everyone has a story right now about what their submission process is looking like. So talk to one another. Thank you so much to our panelists. It has been absolutely amazing getting to learn from you and your beautiful relationships. I've got a little bit of agent envy. I love my agent. I love Emily's not here, but I do love her. She's with Keys Agency. But it's good to be reminded that we have to keep in mind what we want from this relationship, and that it is a relationship and we should be comfortable and feel supported. And the more positive that relationship is, I think the more successful our work will be in getting presented to the world. So thank you so much to all of our panelists and for all of y'all who are here today. Sochi, I think, is going to put in the chat a link to a form that'll give us some feedback on today's programming. Today's program was made possible by a grant from the California Art Center. And if you enjoyed the program, please consider making a small donation to Women Who Submit. And that donation is going in the chat. That donation link is also in the chat. For all of you who joined us on Zoom, and to all of our panelists, thank you again. To everyone who's in person, it's so amazing to be back in person in this hybrid event. And we're gonna close up. Thanks, y'all. It has been wonderful
Thank you,
sharing this time.
everyone.